Some stories aren't meant to be told, but once you hear them, they become part of you, creeping closer in the dark. This is one of those stories. I don't know what time it was when I first woke up. I only know that it was dark, so dark that I couldn't even see my hands in front of me. The air in my room felt heavier than usual, like something was pressing down on my chest, making it harder to breathe. At first, I thought I'd woken up for no reason. Maybe a bad dream, maybe just a random shift in my sleep cycle. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed it. A figure stood in the far corner of my room. At first, I thought it was just a shadow. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe a coat hanging weirdly on a chair? A trick of the dim light? But as I blinked and focused, I realized it wasn't a trick at all. The shape was human, tall, motionless, just standing there. My chest tightened. I tried to move, tried to shift my position in bed, but I couldn't. My arms wouldn't respond. My legs felt like dead weight. I knew about sleep paralysis, had read about it before, but this felt different. Too real. Too wrong. Then I heard it. A whisper. Right in my ear. "I can see that you're not asleep." I swear I felt my heart stop. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to bolt upright, run, do anything, but I couldn't move a muscle. My body was useless, frozen, but my mind was racing, screaming at me to wake up, wake up, wake up. But this wasn't a dream. I forced my breathing to slow down, tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Hallucinations. That's all sleep paralysis was, right? Just hallucinations. Nothing there. Nothing real. But then it moved. Not a step. Not a normal motion. The shape twitched like a glitch in a video game, like someone had cut a second out of reality and shifted it forward. Now, instead of standing in the far corner, it was closer. A shudder ran through me, a wave of pure, unfiltered terror. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that when I opened them, it would be gone. But when I did, it was even closer. It was near the foot of my bed now. Still not moving, still a shadowy silhouette, but closer. Watching, waiting. My breath came in shallow gasps, my body still unresponsive. The whisper came again. "It's rude to pretend to be asleep." I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake up. And then I could move. It happened all at once. My body snapped free from whatever force had been holding it down. Without thinking, I lunged for the lamp on my nightstand, my fingers fumbling against the switch. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs. Light flooded the room. There was nothing there. The corner was empty. My room looked the same as it always had: bed, nightstand, dresser, the same posters on the wall. No shadow, no figure, no whisper. I sat there, shaking, my breath ragged. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe it really was sleep paralysis. That's what I told myself. That's what I forced myself to believe. But as I lay back down, something still felt wrong. The air in the room was still heavy, and even with the light on, I still felt watched. I didn't sleep that night, even with the light on. Even after checking every inch of my room, my mind refused to calm down. My body still buzzed with the leftover terror from what had just happened. I sat up in bed, my back pressed against the headboard, staring at the empty corner where the shadow had been. I told myself it was just sleep paralysis. It had to be. People hallucinate during it all the time, but something about it felt wrong. The voice, that whisper, it had felt so real. Too real. I glanced at my phone. 3:23 a.m. My head felt heavy, my eyes burning with exhaustion. Every time I started to drift off, my body would jolt awake, convinced that if I closed my eyes for too long, I'd wake up to see it standing over me. Eventually, the sky outside turned from black to a dull gray. Morning. I had survived the night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I spent the next day in a fog. Coffee did nothing to wake me up. I felt disconnected, my mind replaying last night over and over, trying to find a logical explanation. I avoided my room as much as possible, sticking to the living room, the kitchen, anywhere but there. But as the day wore on, a sense of dread started creeping back in. Night was coming, and I knew I'd have to sleep eventually. I kept the lights on when I went to bed, every single one. The lamp on my nightstand, the glow from the bathroom, even my laptop screen left open just in case. I wasn't taking any chances, but at some point, exhaustion won. My body shut down, dragging me into a deep, dreamless sleep, until I woke up again, and it was back. I knew before I even opened my eyes. The air was heavy again, thick like a suffocating blanket over my chest. My body felt stiff cold. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I turned my head, just slightly. It wasn't in the corner this time. It was at the foot of my bed. Closer. I could barely breathe. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. I told myself not to blink. Then, it twitched again. Another unnatural, jerky movement, like something had skipped forward in time. It was standing next to my bed now. The whisper came, inches from my face. "You left the light on. That won't help." I tried to move. I couldn't. Something invisible pressed down on my chest, harder this time, as if punishing me for thinking I could fight back. My limbs were useless. My breath came out in ragged, shallow gasps. It was standing so close. I felt like if I moved even slightly, I would touch it. I wanted to scream, to do anything to break whatever nightmare this was. But I couldn't. I wasn't in control anymore. And then, just as suddenly as before, I could move again. I gasped, shooting up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. My hands scrambled for the lamp, fingers slipping over the switch before finally flooding the room with light. Nothing. No shadow. No whisper. No presence. I was alone, but as I sat there, shaking, my breath coming in shallow gulps, I noticed something new. The lamp. The light was dimmer than before, as if something had tried to snuff it out. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I sat in bed, my back against the wall, staring at the dim light of my lamp. My hands were clenched so tightly around the sheets that my fingers ached, but I couldn't let go. I was too afraid, because now I knew. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It wasn't my imagination. It was real, and it was getting closer. By morning, I felt like a ghost of myself. My limbs were heavy, my head ached, and my eyes stung from exhaustion. But I couldn't stay in that room anymore. I threw on some clothes, grabbed my phone and keys, and left the house. I needed to be around people. I needed noise, movement, something to remind me that the world was still normal. The cafe down the street was already open, and I spent most of the morning there, nursing a coffee I barely touched, staring blankly at my phone. I scrolled mindlessly, anything to keep my thoughts occupied, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to last night. It was inside the room with me. It spoke to me. It moved. And worst of all, I had left the lights on, but it came anyway. I thought keeping the room bright would stop it. It didn't. So what now? Did I try to stay awake forever? Never go home? What was I supposed to do? By the time evening rolled around, the thought of going back to my room made my stomach twist. I considered calling a friend, asking to crash at their place, but how would I even explain it? "Hey, can I sleep on your couch? Because I think there's something standing in the corner of my room at night." No one would believe me. Hell, I'd barely believe me. So I went home. I kept every light on. TV, laptop, every lamp, even the one in the hallway. My apartment was glowing. It felt safer that way. But deep down, I knew the lights didn't matter. It would come back anyway. I forced myself to lie down, but I didn't let myself relax. I wasn't going to fall asleep. Not tonight. I kept my phone in my hand, watching videos, reading articles, scrolling through endless pages of nothing just to keep my brain active. No sleeping, no slipping, no blinking too long. At some point, I checked the time, 3:08 a.m. My breath caught. The next 4 minutes felt like an eternity. Every second, I expected to feel that weight on my chest again, that stiffness in my limbs, the cold breath against my skin. 3:09 a.m. I gripped my phone tighter. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. 3:10 a.m. I wasn't going to look at the corner. I refused. If I didn't see it, maybe it wouldn't see me. 3:11 a.m. I closed my eyes for a second, just a second, and then something shifted. A soft sound, like fabric brushing against the floor. No. I forced myself to look, and I saw it, standing right beside my bed. Too close, too still, too wrong. I stopped breathing. The figure was taller than I remembered. The shape of it wasn't quite human, like something almost figured out what a person should look like but got a few details wrong. And then, it moved. Not like a step, not like a normal movement. It glitched forward. 1 second it was by my bed. The next, it was leaning over me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Then its head snapped to the side. Not like turning, more like a sudden, sharp jerk, like something twisting the wrong way. Its face, if it even had one, was just darkness, a void where features should have been. And then the whisper came, "You're trying to stay awake." I whimpered. That won't help either. The moment the last word was spoken, my phone screen flickered and shut off. The lamp dimmed. The whole room darkened. I finally managed to suck in a breath, my body trembling so hard I thought I might break apart. My fingers scrambled for the lamp switch, twisting it over and over. But nothing happened. And then, I blinked. Just a second, and it was gone. The lights returned. My phone buzzed back to life in my hand, and I was alone again. Except, I wasn't, because the air was still heavy, and I knew it was still there, watching, waiting. I didn't sleep. I sat there, shaking, staring at my lamp as if my life depended on it. Maybe it did. My phone was still in my hand, the battery somehow lower than it should have been. The clock read 3:14 a.m. I had made it past 3:12 a.m., but I had barely survived. It had spoken to me again. It had gotten closer. And now I wasn't sure if it was gone. The air in the room felt thick, pressing down on me, like I was breathing in something wrong. It smelled different too. Not foul, not rotten, just off. Like the air had been sitting still for too long. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. I needed to move. I needed to do something. I forced myself to sit up, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. My body protested, every instinct screaming at me not to look around, but I had to. I swept the light toward the corner first. Empty. My heart pounded as I scanned the room. Nothing behind the door, nothing near the window. My closet was open just a crack, but from where I sat, I couldn't see anything inside. I didn't want to check, but I had to. I swallowed hard and swung my legs over the side of the bed. My bare feet touched the floor, the wood freezing cold against my skin. Slowly, I stood up. My knees nearly gave out beneath me, but I forced myself forward, step by step, until I was in front of the closet. The door was barely open, maybe an inch. The flashlight trembled in my grip as I raised it, the beam barely cutting through the darkness inside. Nothing. No shadow, no figure, no movement. Just my clothes. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe it was actually gone. Maybe. The door slammed shut. I jumped back, barely biting down a scream. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought I was dying. No. That didn't just happen. That did not just happen. But the door was shut now, and I sure as hell hadn't touched it. I backed away, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. I grabbed the lamp, yanking the plug out of the wall before shoving my feet into my shoes and bolting out of the room. I didn't care where I was going. I just had to get out. I ended up sitting on my couch in the living room, knees pulled up to my chest, still clutching my phone like a lifeline. I could see my bedroom door from where I sat, still open, the darkness inside feeling thicker than it should have been. It didn't follow me. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but what would I even say? That my closet door shut on its own? That something was whispering to me in the middle of the night? No one would believe me. Hell, I wouldn't believe me. I just needed to get through the night, just until morning. Then I could think, then I could figure out what the hell was happening to me. But something was different now. I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever this thing was, it wasn't just haunting my room. It was haunting me. I must have fallen asleep at some point because the next thing I knew, my phone alarm was blaring. My body jerked awake, panic flooding my veins. Had I slept through 3:12? Had it come back? My phone screen showed 7:30 a.m. Morning. I exhaled a shaky breath. I had made it. My limbs still felt weak, but I forced myself to stand up, stretching out the stiffness in my joints. My brain felt foggy, my thoughts sluggish, but I ignored it. I just needed coffee, something to wake me up, to make me feel normal again. I avoided looking at my bedroom door as I passed by. Not yet. I wasn't ready yet. With coffee in hand, I finally worked up the nerve to check my room. Everything was exactly how I left it. The lamp was still unplugged. The closet door was shut. The only sign that anything had happened was the twisted mess of sheets on my bed, a physical reminder of the worst night of my life. I checked my phone's call log. No outgoing calls, no texts. Checked my browser history. No searches for weird hallucinations. No desperate forum posts asking for help. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't something I had imagined. It had really happened. And then I noticed something strange. My phone battery was at 12%. That didn't make sense. I had plugged it in before I ran out of the room last night. It should have been fully charged, but instead it was drained. I stared at it, unease settling deep in my gut. Something had happened while I was sleeping, and I had no way of knowing what. I didn't go back to my room that day. Even though everything looked normal, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something deeper, something pulling at the edges of my mind, whispering that I wasn't safe, that I was never going to be safe again. So I stayed in the living room. I kept the TV on, played music, did anything to make sure there was noise. The silence felt wrong now, unnatural, like it was waiting for something to crawl into it. The only time I went near my room was to grab my charger. My phone was still draining too fast, losing battery even when I wasn't using it. That wasn't normal, but I ignored it, just like I ignored the feeling of being watched, just like I ignored the way the hallway light seemed dimmer than before. I convinced myself that if I didn't acknowledge it, if I didn't think about it, it would stop. I was wrong. By nightfall, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept more than an hour or two since this started, and it was catching up to me. My body ached. My head felt heavy, and my thoughts were starting to blur together. But I was too afraid to sleep. I told myself I'd stay awake, just one more night, and figure out what to do tomorrow. But no matter how much I fought it, my body had other plans. At some point, I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes, it was 3:12 a.m., and the lights were off. My breath caught in my throat. I knew I had left them on. I knew it. I fumbled for my phone, but the screen stayed dark. It was dead. I wasn't alone. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know. But something inside me, some horrible instinct, made me do it anyway. And there it was, not in the corner, not by the bed, right next to me. I sucked in a sharp breath, my chest locking up as my body refused to move. It was closer than ever. I could feel it. The air was thick, suffocating, heavy with something that wasn't just fear. It was wrongness. The whisper came, so close it felt like it was inside my head. You thought you could ignore me? I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I wasn't just paralyzed. I wasn't in control anymore. I felt something cold brush against my arm. Not a hand, not skin, something else, something not human. And then it leaned closer. That was a mistake. The room plunged into silence. Not normal silence. This was something else. No hum from the refrigerator. No sound from the street outside. No ringing in my ears. Just nothing. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't in my apartment anymore. The walls were still there, but the space around me felt wrong. Too big. Too empty. The room had stretched, warped into something else, something that wasn't real. And the figure? It was still there. Still standing right beside me. Still watching. I felt my body being pulled, forced down like gravity had shifted. My head hit the pillow, but I didn't remember lying down. I tried to lift my arms. I couldn't. It was pressing down on me, holding me there. The whisper came again, but this time, it wasn't just in my ear. It was everywhere. Sleep. I fought so hard, but my body was sinking. My mind was slipping. And then, I was gone. I woke up in the morning. Everything was back to normal. The lights were on. The TV was playing some random commercial. My phone was on the couch, plugged in, back to 80% battery. It was like nothing had happened, but I knew better. Because now, I wasn't sure if I had really woken up, or if I was still dreaming. I didn't feel like myself anymore. Even in the daylight, with the sun streaming through my windows and the city moving around me like normal, I felt off. I couldn't explain it. My limbs felt heavier. My thoughts were slower, like they had to push through something thick and invisible just to make sense. Even my reflection looked different, like I wasn't really there. Something had changed last night, and I was terrified that whatever had happened wasn't over. I tried to go about my day like normal. I needed to. I forced myself to shower, to eat something, to act like a normal person living a normal life. But the moment I stepped into the kitchen, I knew something was wrong. My coffee mug was already sitting on the counter. Full. Still warm. I hadn't made it. A chill ran through me. I swallowed, trying to push down the rising panic. Maybe I was just so exhausted that I forgot doing it. Maybe. I dumped the coffee in the sink and grabbed a new mug. Made it myself, this time watching every step. I took a sip, the warmth settling in my stomach, grounding me. But when I turned back around, the first mug was full again. I dropped mine. The crash of ceramic shattering on the floor barely even registered. No, this wasn't happening. This wasn't. A faint sound made my breath catch in my throat. A whisper from the hallway. You're getting tired. I ran. I didn't stop running until I was outside, the cool air biting against my skin. People passed me on the sidewalk, oblivious to the fact that my whole world was falling apart. I needed to be around people. I needed to be somewhere where it couldn't follow me. I called my friend Jason. Hey man, you okay? He asked, the concern in his voice clear. You sound. I need to crash at your place. My own voice sounded foreign, detached. Jason hesitated. Yeah, of course. You sure you're good? No, I said. I think I'm losing my mind. Jason's place was small but safe. He didn't ask too many questions when I showed up looking like hell. Just toss me a blanket and let me take the couch. I should have told him everything, but I couldn't, because saying it out loud would make it real. And I wasn't ready for that. I stayed up late watching movies with Jason, trying to drown out the creeping anxiety clawing at the back of my mind. The moment I was alone, it would come back. I knew it would, but I was wrong. It didn't wait for me to be alone. It started early this time. At 11:45 p.m., Jason's TV flickered. The screen glitched, the sound warping into something distorted, something that wasn't part of the movie. Then the screen went black. The reflection in the dark glass wasn't right. Jason was sitting on the couch beside me, but the reflection showed someone standing behind us. I barely had time to react before the lights cut out. The room plunged into darkness. I heard Jason shift beside me. What the hell? Power outage. I couldn't speak, because I could see it, even with the lights out, even with the room completely dark. It was standing in the doorway, watching, waiting. Then, it twitched forward. Jason inhaled sharply. Did you hear that? He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. I grabbed his arm, my fingers digging into his skin. We had to leave. Now. But before I could speak, the whisper came. He's looking right at me. Jason froze. I felt it move, closer. And then, the lights came back on. The TV resumed like nothing had happened. Jason let out a shaky laugh. Dude, that was... He turned to me. Stopped. His face paled. What? My voice barely came out. Jason swallowed hard. Man, you're... He hesitated. I gripped his arm. What? He didn't answer at first. Just stared at me like something was wrong. Like I wasn't me. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Your eyes. I went cold. What about them? Jason shook his head slowly. I don't know. Just for a second. They looked. He stopped himself. Shook his head again, like he was trying to shake off a bad feeling. Never mind. I'm just tired. But he didn't look at me the same way for the rest of the night. And when I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, I swore. I wasn't looking back. I didn't sleep. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. Watching. Waiting. The air in Jason's apartment was too still. The shadows stretched too far. Even with the lights on, it felt like something was pressing against the edges of reality, trying to bleed through. Jason must have noticed how tense I was because, at some point, he tossed a pillow at me. Dude, seriously, what the hell is going on with you? I opened my mouth, closed it. How was I supposed to explain this? He'd seen the power flicker. He'd felt it too, even if he didn't know what it was. And whatever he saw in my eyes before, he hadn't brought it up again. I decided to start small. I think I've been sleepwalking, I said. It was half true. Weird things keep happening when I wake up. Jason frowned. Like what? I hesitated. Things move. Lights turn off. My phone drains overnight. I swallowed. And I keep waking up at the same time. 3:12 a.m. Jason didn't laugh. That should have reassured me. It didn't. Okay, yeah, he said finally. That's weird. Understatement of the year. I nodded, rubbing a hand over my face. My skin felt colder than it should. I need to figure out what's going on, I muttered. Maybe set up a camera. See if I'm actually sleepwalking. Jason's eyes lit up. Dude, I've got a motion cam. I blinked. What? From my apartment. He shrugged. Paranoia, man. I've had it up for months in case someone breaks in. A thought hit me. What if it recorded what happened last night? What's the playback range? I asked quickly. Jason pulled out his phone, tapping at the app. 36 hours. I exhaled. Good. That meant... Jason froze. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he was going to be sick. No way, he whispered. What? My voice felt distant. Jason turned the screen toward me, and my stomach dropped. There, at 3:12 a.m., the camera caught something. A shadow standing in the doorway. Not mine, not Jason's. Something else. The recording showed me on the couch, staring at the TV. Jason beside me, the lights flickering, and in the hallway, something watching, not moving, not breathing, just there. Then in a single frame jump, it was closer. Jason swore under his breath. Tell me that's a glitch, he said. His voice shook. I couldn't, because the next frame, it was standing right behind me, and the screen cut to black. Jason's hands were shaking. Dude, this is some horror movie SH. He stopped, sucking in a breath. Okay, we need to figure this out. Maybe it's like a stalker? A real person? He was grasping for logic. I didn't blame him, but I knew better. This wasn't a person. People don't move like that. People don't make reality flicker. People don't whisper things into your mind. And now, It wasn't just following me anymore. It was letting someone else see it. Jason was shaking. I didn't blame him. I could barely breathe, barely think. My whole body felt disconnected, like my brain was rejecting what I had just seen. A shadow, not moving, then closer, then behind me, and then nothing. Jason swallowed hard. Dude, I don't. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. I don't know what the hell that was. I did, but I couldn't say it out loud, because saying it out loud would make it real. Instead, I forced out, "We need to check the rest of the footage." Jason hesitated. His fingers hovered over the screen like he didn't want to touch it, like whatever was on that video might reach through and grab him. I knew how he felt, but I needed to see it, because a horrible thought was creeping into my mind. What happened after the screen cut to black? Jason tapped the screen. The playback resumed. For a few seconds, it was just darkness. Then, static. The image snapped back into focus, and my stomach dropped. I wasn't on the couch anymore. I was standing in the middle of the room. Jason was still on the couch, asleep, but I was just standing there, completely still, facing the hallway. The time stamp read 3:14 a.m. Jason sucked in a breath. "No, man, that's not. You didn't get up." I was right there, but the video didn't care about logic. It played on, and what happened next made every hair on my body stand on end. In the footage, I took a step forward, then another. My body moved wrong, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Slow, unnatural, like something was making me move. Jason let out a string of curses. No, 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 no. The recorded version of me stopped in the hallway. The shadow was still there, waiting. And then, I turned my head, not toward the shadow, toward the camera, and I smiled. I have no memory of this. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember smiling, but the camera did. And when I smiled, the shadow moved. It stepped forward, and the screen cut to black again. Jason stood up so fast the chair tipped over. No, man, you're screwing with me. That's fake, right? You made that. His voice wasn't right. Neither was mine, because when I turned to look at him, his eyes widened. He took a step back. I felt cold. "Jason," my voice was hoarse. "What's wrong?" His hands clenched into fists. "Your face just..." He stopped himself, shook his head. "No, forget it." I grabbed his arm before he could pull away. "What? Did you see?" Jason swallowed. "For a second," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "It wasn't your face." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go, because it wasn't just following me anymore. It was inside me. I wanted to believe Jason was wrong, that the footage was some kind of glitch, that the fear was messing with his head. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't just following me anymore. It was inside me. I stayed at Jason's place that night, not because I thought it would help. I knew it wouldn't, but I couldn't be alone. Jason didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He just gave me a blanket, sat on the couch, and put on a movie like nothing had happened. Like we weren't both waiting for 3:12 a.m. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up, and I knew, before I even opened my eyes, that something was wrong. The air was thick, heavy. Jason was next to me, breathing too slow, too deep. He was still asleep. I wasn't. And something was standing over me. No, not standing, leaning. I felt it before I saw it. The weight of its presence, the cold breath against my skin. I opened my eyes, and it was there, not in the hallway, not in the doorway, right above me, its head tilted in that unnatural, glitching motion. And then, I felt it press down on my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even think. The whisper came, softer this time. "You're making this difficult." I tried to scream. Nothing came out. It wasn't letting me. Then, the room shifted. Not physically, not in any way I could describe. But one second, I was in Jason's apartment, and the next, I wasn't. I was somewhere else, a place that looked like Jason's apartment, but wasn't. The furniture was there, the walls were there, but it felt empty, hollow, like I had been pulled into a version of reality that wasn't finished being built. And I wasn't alone. The figure was there, watching, waiting. The whisper came again. Stop resisting. I tried to run. My legs wouldn't move. I tried to scream. My voice didn't work. I was trapped. The figure took a step forward, then another, and then it reached for me. I jerked awake. I was back in Jason's apartment. I could move again. I could breathe, but something was wrong. Jason was still next to me, snoring softly. The TV was still on. The room looked normal, but I felt different, like something had shifted inside me. I stood up, moving too fast, my breath coming in short gasps. My skin was freezing cold. I stumbled into the bathroom and flipped on the light. And when I looked in the mirror, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I stared at my reflection, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. It was me, but it wasn't. There was something wrong with my face. The eyes staring back weren't mine. They were too dark, too deep, like I was looking at a hole instead of a person. I stepped back from the mirror, my pulse hammering. The lights flickered, just once, like something had exhaled against reality. I wasn't alone. I would never be alone again. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds. Could have been hours. At some point, Jason knocked on the door. "Dude, you good?" No, I wasn't. But I forced my voice to sound normal. "Yeah." A pause. "Then, you sure? You're acting weird." "Weird." I almost laughed. I opened the door. Jason was staring at me, eyes narrowed, like he was trying to see something underneath my skin. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jason took a step back. "Yeah," he muttered. "You look different." I left Jason's place that afternoon. I told him I needed rest, that I just needed a break. He didn't believe me. Neither did I. But I couldn't stay. Not after what I saw in the mirror. Not after what I felt. Because now I knew the truth. It wasn't just following me. It was inside me. And it was waiting for something. It started small. On the way home, people stared at me longer than they should have. Like they knew. Like they could see it. A woman crossed the street when she saw me coming. A man in a passing car did a double take, his expression twisting into something between confusion and fear. I checked my reflection in a store window. I looked normal, but I wasn't. That night, I did everything I could to stay awake. It didn't matter, because at 3:12 a.m., I woke up anyway. Not because of a sound, not because of a whisper, because of a feeling. I wasn't just being watched. I was being controlled. My limbs felt foreign. My body felt wrong, like I wasn't in charge of it anymore. I lifted my hand without meaning to, turned my head without deciding to. The whisper came, "You're learning." My breath hitched. I tried to fight it, to force myself to stop moving, but my body didn't listen. I sat up in bed, slowly, like something was pulling my strings. Then I stood, walked. My feet carried me across the room, toward the mirror. I tried to stop. I couldn't. I tried to scream. I couldn't. I stepped in front of the mirror and saw something looking back at me. It wasn't me. Not anymore. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look away. The thing in the mirror was me, but it wasn't. Its smile was too wide. Its eyes were too empty, like a mask stretched over something else, something that didn't quite understand how to be human. And it was watching me, not as a reflection, as something separate, something real. Then it moved, but I didn't. It tilted its head in that unnatural, glitching motion. My body stayed still, and for the first time, I realized it wasn't copying me anymore. It had taken my place. The whisper came, "You see it now, don't you?" I tried to step back, but my legs wouldn't respond. I wasn't trapped. I was being held. The thing in the mirror took a step forward, toward me, not inside the glass. Outside. I felt the room shift, the air thickening like something was rearranging reality around me. Then, I moved, but not the way I wanted. The mirror pulled me in. I hit the floor hard, but the sound was wrong. Not an impact, more like a muffled echo, like I had dropped into something that didn't fully exist. The world around me was dim, not dark, but muted, like the colors had been drained, like I was standing in a half-formed version of reality. And the worst part, I was still in my room, but I wasn't, because in front of me, standing in the place I had just been, was me, the other me, smiling. But it wasn't looking at me anymore. It was looking out, because I was in the mirror now, and it wasn't. I slammed my hands against the glass. It felt solid, unbreakable, like ice. The other me took a slow step back, stretching, rolling my shoulders like it was getting comfortable in my skin. I screamed. No sound came out. It turned to face me, still smiling. The whisper came again, but this time it didn't come from behind me. It came from my own mouth. It's your turn now. And then it walked away, into my life, into my body, and I was left behind, trapped, watching. I slammed my fists against the glass. Again, and again, and again. Nothing. No sound. No cracks. Like I was punching solid air. The room beyond the mirror, the real world, was the same. My bed, my nightstand, the glow from the hallway light. But I wasn't there anymore. It was the thing wearing my face. And I was stuck. Inside. I watched as it moved through my life. It stretched my limbs, testing them like a new suit. It walked to the door, paused. Then, as if remembering something, it turned back to the mirror. To me. It tilted its head in that wrong, twitching way. Then it leaned in close. Close enough that I could see the slight distortion in its features, the way my face wasn't sitting quite right on its bones. And then, it whispered. I was patient. I froze. It smiled. Then, without another word, it turned, walked to the door, and left, leaving me alone, trapped, forever. I don't know how much time passed. Minutes? Hours? Days? There was no time in here. No sound. Just me, and the world I could no longer touch. I screamed, punched the glass until my knuckles ached. But nothing happened. The glass wasn't glass. It was a wall. A barrier, and I wasn't getting out, ever. And then, I saw something, a shape, a person, not me, someone else, lying in my bed, asleep. My heart stopped. No, 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 no. This wasn't right. I pressed my hands against the barrier, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps, because I knew what this meant. I knew what came next. And then, as if on cue, the whisper came, not from behind me, not from the walls, from the darkness in the corner of the room. Now, it's your turn to stand in the corner. I tried to scream, but no sound came out, because I was already fading, already becoming part of the reflection, already disappearing. At 3:12 a.m., the new person stirred. They opened their eyes, blinking, confused. Then they saw me, standing in the corner. Just a shadow, just a shape, just like before. And as their breath hitched, as their body froze, I leaned in close and whispered, I can see that you're not asleep.